Hi, everybody. Thank you for giving us whatever portion of these 90 minutes you can out of your day. We appreciate it. And the we is all of us. And so while I'm emceeing, I'm speaking as somebody who's learning from the ASI and from whatever unfolds from these processes. I know we have some new members here who haven't been before to one of these meetings, and welcome. We roll with this as it goes. Each meeting, whether it's a presenter meeting or just ourselves, presenter meeting or ourselves, every 6 weeks, that's the sequence. What we do in the next meeting evolves from what needs have come up from our group in the last meeting. So we try to stay up to date with how we're moving our own culture forward. And for myself, it helps me to be more transparent, to kind of self-reflect more, to feel into where I'm at on my own journey and where my peers are at. And can we together grow and evolve, and what would that look like? So our work in the ASI is very future oriented because it's around shedding an old model that no longer serves in a culture that I personally hope will never be regulated. However, how do we self-regulate, and how are we transparent in every way so that we can be accountable to the laws of the land, to morality, to our internal monitor of how we're doing as people. And so what we have done in the beginning, we wrote the code of ethics. It was cumbersome and large with a lot of repetition because we wanted to cover everything from the outset. Like, cover everything at the risk of duplication. Let's not miss anything. And now, as the time has gone by, the critical points are getting more clear, and we're finding our voice, and we're finding the energy, I suppose, behind what we want to say. And that's taken a while for us to find it. How do we present as a group of leaders, teachers, guides, interested parties? How do we present what we want to say? Where does that come from? Not from a hierarchical religious base, which has pros and cons, but from a place of where does teaching need to go, to what does that look like? So this evolution has had to take some time. As a result, it's very obvious that our code of practice will never be, Moses' 10 commandments etched in stone. It can't be. It's got to be an evolving, growing thing, or else we have forgotten that we need to evolve and self-reflect also. So it's got to reflect what we're doing within ourselves as individuals. So it's always my own hope is that, to stay as honest and true as I can as a teacher, and how is that reflected and supported within our culture. So it's the micro and the macro, and then how does that feed out into the next wave of teachers who come after us? And can we turn the tide so that future generations of teachers and leaders are better informed about where their own morality and a code of ethics that can be externally endorsed, where they line up? And so where does that, and how does that integrity, what does it look like? How does it flow? What does it look like? So what we've done is, since February, we took on to let's distill the code. Let's put the energy of what we feel our community is about, and the heart that we seem to bring to all of these meetings, the increase in honesty, the steadily increasing in honesty in these meetings as we go on a couple of years down the road. Can we bring that into the code? So a few of us have worked on this since the end of February. We were blessed by our incoming board member, Phil Goldberg, who's there in the team with the rust colored top waving. Phil is an author by one of his professions. And so it was beautiful to get a writer to come in. It was just that extra angle of being able to distill condense, rework the languaging to make it more succinct. So what we have today is these 24 points that I'm going to see if we can go through each one. I might put each one in the chat box. If there's something glaring or an omission, let us know. In the back of my mind is the decision that we made is that, like, to go from the old code of ethics to this one, it's very short, and a supporting document might be something in between that would add explanatory sentences, a short paragraph. Where does something need more explanation? And so while some comments that I'm looking forward to hearing from you might be around actually modifying the tenets themselves, I'm also listening to see what needs further explanation, and that could be in a supporting paragraph to one, to several, perhaps to all of the tenets. So there's two things: the tenets themselves, and what do we need to beef out in order to be clearer.
Can I add something, Jack? The other thing that may be worth paying some attention to is the order and sequencing of the tenets, because we didn't really pay a lot of attention to that. But some of them seem to flow better together, and some should maybe come sooner. That sort of thing is, also a factor.
Super. Yeah. Thank you, Phil. So is that okay? If there can be just a couple of nods, is it clear enough where we're going to go? Super. Thank you all. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut and paste the first tenet into the chat box. And I guess raise your hand or unmute yourself. What system did we decide we were doing?
We didn't really, but we'll just do it right now where you don't need to raise your hand, but we'll take turns, and we're kind of limit what we're going to say for, about 2 to 3 minutes, because we have quite a few to get through and a number of people on the call. So
perfect. So just to be sensitive and unmute yourself and speak. First one.
Why don't you read it out, Jack? Read out the tenet.
Yeah, thank you. Performing our work in accord with the highest standards of ethics, right behavior, and professional competency. If there's nothing, I'll go on.
Can you hear me? So I used to wear this hat in another life also, of like organizational consulting. And what I was kind of wondering with these codes, do you have a mission statement and a vision statement, or did you decide you weren't going to do that for your organization? Because I found myself getting a little lost with and to be honest, I thought that it was quite a lot of language, and usually there's a vision and a mission, and I felt like I wanted to, I listened to your interview with the guys that was also on your website, and you had two really clear, like, we're trying to be in the moment and check ourselves internally, and it was like, we want to hold ourselves accountable. It was very clear what the intention is behind the code of ethics, and I felt like there was a way to kind of move it where the language is another level of include and transcend of the 26, because the more you include and transcend with language, the less you have to write. It's similar to all of nature, where if you get it deep enough and broad enough, it's almost simple, but it covers the wholeness. So I kind of wondered about that, because your languaging is very clear in that regard, I feel, when you're expressing it. And then I wondered, well, how does that translate to all of this written language? And then usually a mission and a vision statement also is that. And I didn't know if the organization had gotten that far or what was happening. And I don't want to necessarily detract from your process in any way. These were the things that were coming to me, sort of a newbie in the organization. and just from an organizational standpoint, and also moving to the vision of a postmodern approach to spiritual teaching, as we more householders are waking up and potentially moving into that role, and you're having a cultural shift, and you want to set that groundwork with this organization, no longer necessarily the hierarchy of the church, and we cover things up or whatever it is. So those were the things that came to me that I thought I needed to express now, and ignore it if it's not useful. So, because I don't want to take away from your process either. I know it's like we only have an hour and whatever, but those were the things that were kind of, I found myself wondering.
Yeah, that's great, Catherine. I think Phil might be better placed to reply.
I just always assumed there would be something like mission statements and vision statements. I think something like that already exists, and it could be worked on. So people would know what ASI is, what the mission is, what its purpose is, and then
the code of ethics.
The code of ethics, yeah.
Right.
So it would be framed in a larger way.
Right. I just didn't see anything like that. And so I was just kind of wondering, well, where is this in the context of the overall? And is there a way to have a few, I don't know how to describe it, integral, where there's some statements prefacing the code of ethics?
Yes.
That's an transcendent of the rest.
To be done. It will be.
Jack, from my experience in writing business plans and that sort of thing, those short, intense mission statements usually come after you've created the body. So it's sort of abstracting rather than starting from something very abstract and trying to explain that.
Okay.
And I guess visually it would serve as the keystone to everything. It would sort of support and be the central pull of gravity for the entire structure.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
There would be, there's a home page, and I always envisioned when I was helping out with the code that there would be something introducing it.
Yeah.
As well as the home page for ASI that would have, the purpose and mission and all that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And since, am I muted?
No, you're on.
There we go. Sorry. Yeah. I'd love now to look back at the vision and mission. I think we had mission and I think we had 3 goals, something like this in the old thing. But I like what you're saying, and it aligns with David. But for myself, I know I went down the rabbit hole. I haven't looked at the vision and mission since February, apart from how it percolates in my head, because this was such a rabbit hole. So thank you, Catherine. I totally hear you. And I've this recorded, and we'll listen to it a few times to okay, how can we inform it back now? And does the umbrella statement, the context, does it look different now? So thank you. Thank you. Very valuable.
Hi, everyone. It's Celia. I just, the question that comes when I read performing our work in accord with the highest standards of ethics, right behavior, and professional competency, the first question my brain says is, what highest standards? In reference to what? And there may be a very simple answer, but that's the question that my brain asked.
Mm-hmm.
The highest standards has no material content.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like the difference between having a motto far beyond, which could be beyond anything, and one that says character before career, that has material content. So that's something to think about.
There are cultural differences as well.
We've already seen the need for supplementary documents and explorations and all the rest. And I would think we would just, you know, the feedback is extraordinarily important, and this, you know, we can change and edit anytime if you know, we agree on changes.
I'd like to back up what Catherine said just in relationship to this particular code. I would think would be part and parcel of the mission statement.
Yes,
First one, right?
Could be.
Maybe we could draw upon the medical tradition, which is do no harm. Maybe that could be, I don't know, maybe that's too much in the negative, but it sounds like people want context to what is the highest standard of ethics. I think it speaks unto itself, but to provide context, that might be a possibility. Do no harm. I don't know.
Well, there's other, you know, 23 other points.
That's true.
That flesh
We've been on this one for a while. Yeah.
So.
True.
As I look at the whole, I kind of copied and pasted and put it in a Word document, the 24, whatever. And it looks to me like you could probably solve this by saying, performing our work in accord with the highest standards, ethics, right behavior, professionally, as listed below. In a way that's more of an opening sentence than an actual, where the rest of the context for all that is listed in all the rest of the 23.
Mm-hmm. Could be.
At least
or something like this.
A lot more specific in the 23.
Yeah, or the first one could be, is so general it could be incorporated into an introductory statement that frames the code.
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, and I like what Stephen was saying. You know, it's like morality. Morality is when you've integrated. For me, anyway, morality is when you've integrated ethics, and it's in alignment with something deeper. That's where your morals come from. You know, so where's the line between what is written and what is not written? And we got to play with that a bit. But I think we're on track. I'm going to pop up number 2. As teachers and leaders and guides, we commit to engaging in continuous and unending self-reflection, learning, and holistic personal growth.
So I'd just like to say this is one that I think would need a little bit of a supporting statement just around particularly what holistic means here.
Thanks, Deb.
And this may be coming up later, but again, what comes to me when I read that is, well, how are members held accountable to this statement? Is this just a commitment that I make to you guys because I'm a part of this group, or what is it that is holding me accountable to this number 2?
That applies to almost every point. And the issue of accountability and what ASI will do about that is an open question, I believe.
Yeah, and we're, you know, we're all mad busy, and we're all slicing out little pieces of time to kind of further move this forward. And within that context, there is somebody whom I hope came today who's interested in moving forward the peer-to-peer support as one possible model of where we can meet in small groups and literally like, okay, who's having trouble with what in a confidential space? What would that look like? Who would feel that that's appropriate for them right now, and model it for 6 months, and then come back to our group here and say, that was a load of crap, and here's why, and this part worked. And, you know, so that type of models of accountability, we're wide open. But it means, because we're all so busy, it means like, if you have an idea, are you willing to champion it? Are you willing to run with it and see how it works? Because this really is a shared effort. we commit to cultivating essential personal qualities such as honesty, integrity, compassion, humility, and empathy. I see a few nods. The first one.
No one objects to those qualities.
I might add, just because we were just talking about it, accountability.
Good point.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you, Celia. That's great. That's absolutely perfect. Moving right along. We commit to respecting equally the rights, dignity, and privacy of all students and fellow practitioners. Moving right along. We commit to holding in confidence everything conveyed to us in confidence, whether through direct communication or correspondence.
Isn't that redundant from 4?
Yes, except it adds something to privacy. The notion of confidentiality sort of seems like every profession I know that's singled out. So it seemed like a good idea.
Privacy is also in 4.
Yes, but that's what I meant. If privacy in the context of the other things didn't seem enough to highlight confidentiality. I mean, we could tweak all this, but it seemed to be a good idea to keep that as a point unto itself.
I thought that this one and 6 could be combined in the sense that you could say holding in confidence, with the exception of where local laws apply, because that's the other side of the confidentiality.
Yeah, those are possibilities, sure.
Yeah.
And some of this may need, a few sentences of elaboration or context.
Yeah. 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 Duly noted. Being honest, we commit to being honest and transparent regarding business and financial matters.
I was thinking it might be good to add regarding organizational and personal, where if they're a head of an organization, you want to make sure that there's some transparency there, and then, that they're not robbing the organization blind, or that the organization is not misusing people's money, that there's a whole big thing about that. So I didn't know how to do that, because there's people who are leaders of the organization that are funneling and personally not honoring the organization, and then the organization itself can be really challenging with how they're using people's money. Like
the NRA.
Yeah.
Maybe, Catherine, you seem to have some expertise in this. Maybe on another occasion you could help us with some supporting documents for these kind of things.
Sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of material coming through for a supporting document. Yeah, and it's about finding the balance between something that's succinct and clear, and and not making it heavy and burdensome. Just that that's a writing thing, isn't it? Really? Yeah. Okay.
Well, I'll just copy and paste. I just changed the sentence briefly.
Super. Yeah, the chat box we'll keep it and use it too, as well as the recording. So all these things are very useful. Yeah. Thanks, Catherine. Sure. And the next one, we commit to being self-aware, open, and humble about the limitations of our knowledge and experience. That's loaded. but I think it says it all, you know.
I think it does too. And although I can be self-aware, open, and humble about the limitations of my knowledge and experience and not tell you about it.
Well,
so I
yeah.
wonder if, like, I mean, I don't want to maybe too much redundancy, but honest, you know, again, like the word honesty, the word accountable, something that means that, yes, I'm doing that, but I'm not keeping it to myself.
I thought that was implied, or at least, yeah,
It ought
suggested.
to be. It ought to be implied in humility.
No, the word open.
Yeah.
Is
With
what,
others. Maybe
yeah.
open with others.
Yeah, we can. See, this is another place where it's a choice of either tweaking the statement or adding, you know, a few sentences to supplement it, to that, where you don't feel compelled to be that concise, and you can, you know, so that to be determined. But this is great feedback.
Yeah, I see the subtext here as being, you don't let power get to your head. Like you have yourself in perspective. That's the subtext.
Yeah.
For me, at least.
And you don't present yourself as something you're not.
Right.
Okay.
Almost like, I'm just going to make a suggestion that maybe somehow number 3 and number 8 can be combined.
Good point. Good point. I hope it's okay to move on. I don't want to override anything, but I just have to take a guess that we're okay to move on. Treating students' questions, concerns, doubts, and experiences with respect and never trivializing or dismissing their inquiries. That would include that non-dual, oh, you don't exist anyway. You know, that kind of stuff that happens, that abuse of power.
Struggling a bit with the word inquiries. Wondering if there might be a better word or additional words that you can hear that as questions that they might have. And so maybe also self-disclosures, or I don't know, something broader or encompassing. I'm not sure.
Or experiences, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're onto something there, Deb. All right, yeah. Good. We commit to listening seriously to honest feedback about our own methods and behavior, and, when appropriate, requesting and encouraging it. We developed feedback forms earlier this year that are downloadable on the site for us to use for online and in person. You know, there's been very little take up, and I don't know why, but it's like, okay, what would it be like for us after every satsang or meditation group or whatever it is we're doing, after a course or after a weekend, to ask for feedback? And then if the feedback comes back, do we know how to deal with it? And that's a whole other ball of wax.
I'm struggling in this one with the word appropriate. I think there needs to be an addendum explanation for that word, perhaps.
Yeah, it seemed a little heavy-handed to say just, you know, we commit to requesting and encouraging it, because, you know, it's not always the right thing to do. So something else might work better.
Can we put something in here, for me at least? I'm in kind of the spiritual emergency area, and something about like attitude or approach of well-being of your client or student or whoever you're working with, and kind of responsibility related to that. You know, if they, a lot of times what happens is they spin out, they're out of the capability of the person that they're dealing with, and then and then the guy just goes AWOL, and this guy's left, you know, usually ending up in a mental hospital and everything. Is there something we could just like the well-being of the person that you're working with, because there's a responsibility there, I think.
Are you referring to point 10, or because it sounds like that?
Yeah.
Is
I'm referring to point 10.
Okay. Because it sounds like the well-being of clients is even bigger than point 10.
Yeah, point 10 is about the a teacher, practitioner, or whatever, getting feedback on their own methods and behavior. So what you're saying about being responsible for being able to handle their state, it seems like a different point, right?
I think it's in 11. It's sort of combined in 11 and 9.
And there's also the certain point at which you realize that someone you're working with needs a kind of treatment or facility that you can't provide, and you need to take the responsibility for passing them on.
Yeah. I think we have that somewhere.
Number 12, yeah. Yeah, I'm going to put up 11 and 12 because it might address a little bit more of that spiritual emergency and what's going on. Let's see if we cover it. Oops, did I lose it? I deleted it. Sorry.
Just one other point about relative to this line of thinking, relative to number 10, there can be a way that the honest feedback, so there's this kind of fine line with the feedback you're getting and discerning relative to what's happening with the state of the student and how they're giving the feedback. If it's projection, if it's a spiritual emergency on their part and they see you as the trigger, you know, there's different bandwidths of feedback. But so I kind of like the idea of maybe doing something around rather than, I'm wondering about tweaking the word listening just by the idea of the neutrality of the feedback form. Like, I like the idea of using the feedback form where it kind of takes it away into a space of objectivity so that it might neutralize some of these other dynamics.
That's the kind, to me, that's the kind of a perfect thing to add in a supplementary.
Okay, gotcha.
You know, here's, that can be done this way. We found this. People have, so, and the supplementary documents doesn't have to, you know, have any concern for being concise. And so we can elaborate as much as possible. People can add to it on an ongoing basis. People can argue over things, and because this stuff is complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And it should be obvious that almost every term that will be used in this document will be open to future discussion, right? This is going to be an ongoing thing.
Can't wait.
I have a comment about number 12, which is that a person might not have expertise that they think they actually do have. For instance, I heard a story recently, I think Phil heard this also, where a well-known spiritual teacher was publishing a, I don't know if Phil heard this part, but he was publishing a sort of wellness flyer that would be stacked in health food stores and stuff like that, with all kinds of ads and articles for alternative therapies and stuff. And then he led a spiritual retreat in which he advised some guy to drink 2 gallons of water. And the guy did that within about a 5-minute period. It threw off his sodium balance so badly that he went into a coma and died. And then the teacher and the guy's wife dismissed it as being, well, nobody dies, you know, and there's nobody to die and all that stuff. So it's a pretty crazy story. But obviously this guy probably thought he knew what he was doing in advising someone to drink that much water. It was some kind of purificatory exercise or something. And I can think of many examples of people doing that, assuming the holistic or alternative knowledge that they really don't have. So anyway, that could be perhaps an elaborative subpoint under 12.
Yeah.
I think for 12 too, there's something in refraining from giving counsel in matters outside of our areas of training and expertise. I'm thinking more like I know there's in the ethics of spiritual direction, which is what I do, the wording is something more like, when we know that someone is seeking counsel or expertise that we don't have, we refer them to the appropriate professional, something like that. So it's very similar.
Isn't that in there somewhere? I know we intended something like that. Maybe somehow it got, we neglected to include that, but it's terribly important, I would think.
It was in an earlier draft and I don't see it in this one. I think it might have fallen through the cracks.
That's an important omission.
Really important.
Yeah.
And Gino, does it come closer to the spiritual emergency topic that you were mentioning earlier?
Yeah, well, it ties into the whole kind of responsibility for action kind of thing. Just, you know, that for me, reverence. And then for me, the other thing I've been working on too is just, this is separate to this, but just kind of an intersubjective rules of engagement.
Mm.
Could you be more specific about that? Because I see this sort of implied in a lot of this, but you're seeing something more specific.
Well, I do research in phenomenology and neurophysiology. And so from the perspective of awareness and from the perspective of every cell in your body, and this is coming from a materialist perspective, all there is what's around you, how your body feels, and there's what you know from thought in this mental area. And so right now I'm in my music room here. I'm lying down on a sofa. I have internal feelings of hunger or thirst or whatever, but this conversation is happening kind of in this mental realm. And so, and what some of the things that we've been researching is what's actually happening when we're talking to each other. You know, all of my past experiences from when I was born to today are encoded in my physiology. All of your past experiences are encoded in your physiology. Right now we're speaking English. 我现在讲国语的话, if I start speaking Chinese, you probably wouldn't know what I was saying. So what's actually happening when we're speaking? And the premise is it's a physiology to physiology experience. And it looks like you just picked up a glass or something and took a drink of something, you're wearing a black hat. So I can use language in a declarative kind of, or in to point things out that are in this moment and calibrate, you know, our experience of the moment. And that's one way of using language without, and so what can we say with any kind of certainty, you know, when you have two people that are in a room talking to each other and there's us talking, you know, things that I intend, you seem to have nodded your head, you know, that arguably is your intention, but then if a call comes in or something happens around us, that's something else, which both of us can be aware of. But then, and it's just setting up a framing of how people kind of engage. Because you have different people that have different worldviews and different perspectives and different levels of development. And again, this is all just rules of engagement. You know, what can people talk about, and how can, and what's happening when we're engaging in the intersubjective. Just real briefly too, because I deal with a bunch of people that are kind of bottom-up people, where you just can be still and, you know, kind of from a witness, and then you have these top-down people that kind of get downloads and channels, and oh, you know, there's, you know, we've had situations where a person knows that, oh, this person that I'm talking to, their father isn't their father who they think it is, and they get a download like this, and, you know, is it appropriate to share this kind of thing? And so when you have these top-down versus bottom-up people, two bottom-up people, you just end up staring at each other for a long period of time. But then the top-down ones, you know, it's just, how do you get these different people with different abilities and different gifts together, and being able to connect?
Much to think about.
It seems to me, in this attempt to codify, which is a noble and necessary attempt, we're kind of taking the ineffable. We're trying to express an attitude, a way of being in our world that's honorable and integrous, and codify that and concretize it. And, you know, it's not the easiest thing to do, but I see it happening here. And I see it as two streams and trying to bridge the two streams. Because we're kind of assuming people understand these things, what it means to be honest, what it means to be caring and considerate and responsible. We're assuming that, like that's in our DNA in some way, or in our pure awareness. Maybe not, but there is that assumption, and we have to work from that. And we can concretize it as much as we can, but I think that innate assumption is there. You know, others might disagree with me, but.
Well, but we also have to assume, judging from human history, that people won't agree, and people will have their own interpretations and their own self-serving interpretations, and this is all part of the mix. If codes like this were sufficient, we wouldn't need to write a code right now. It would have been done thousands of years ago, and
Yeah, absolutely.
so, you know, we recognize that we all have to.
Right. No, I'm saying it has to happen, of course, yeah. But it's just the difficulty is translating it and giving it context and making it not too specific, but specific enough.
Yeah.
As I was saying earlier, every term in this, however it's written, finally, is going to be subject to continuing discussion. It seems to me that what we're simply trying to do is to get all of the ideas and basic concepts stated so that they can be discussed at a later time and developed. Is that fairly close?
That's how I saw it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure Jack and Rick would agree.
Is Jack speaking?
Thanks, Annie. I missed it.
Okay.
Establishing and maintaining clear, concrete, and appropriate professional boundaries with all students, employees, and associates.
There shouldn't be any disagreement about that.
Here, concrete. Right. I think you're muted again.
The next one might be coupled with something that came up earlier, so I see a pattern emerging. But that said, not seeking or presuming exalted privileges or glorified status because of our role as spiritual teachers. This touches on the do no harm. Using only with proper care and caution any techniques that can potentially cause harmful side effects.
Ah, yeah.
Like drinking
that's
2
good.
gallons of water.
Yeah, right.
Or I've heard of other examples where people have been prescribed like excessive amounts of pranayama, you know, do fast pranayama for half an hour or something, and then they just end up going nuts.
Spiking the 2 gallons of water with psychedelics.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny, as you read these points, every time you read one, instances flash to mind of examples of why we need such a point.
Yeah.
That's the idea.
I just wanted to add something for 14. Seeking or presuming. I wonder if there could be something in there about taking advantage of, because sometimes I haven't sought or presumed exalted privileges or glorified status, but it's been given.
It's given to you, yeah.
And so if it's given to me, what do I do with it? Well, there is a very...
Maybe not exploiting.
Not exploiting, not taking advantage of, whatever.
Yeah. We have a lot of cross-referencing with points. And you know, that's an option too, to sort of refer back to point about humility or whatever. But you're absolutely right. As I was reading it fresh, I thought, yeah, but sometimes it's the students who give that to people. Yeah.
I think that's almost inevitable in some cases.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it has, yeah.
Also, I mean, yeah, you take somebody like the Dalai Lama or Ama Chi, or or various teachers who are venerated, and sometimes they go out of their way to do humble things, like dig trenches or pick up garbage or something. But on the other hand, there's a certain hoopla that naturally happens around them, and in those two cases, I think they handle it well, and they counterbalance it with constant reminders of, humility. But in other cases, it definitely has gone to teachers' heads. But so I don't think we're trying to say that there should never be any kind of, well, maybe we are. You guys can tell me what you think. That there should never be any kind of traditional or ceremonial recognition of a teacher's status. But the thing we're trying to watch out for here is having it, result in a very kind of weird, imbalanced scene, and having teachers get carried away with it and take advantage of it.
Yeah, that's where the exploitation comes in.
It's about the teacher getting off on it, and to have that level of self-awareness that you don't get off on it. Because, if it happens and it goes over here, of course, it's just integrated in the work and it doesn't become a thing. It's about how the teacher connects to it. And
it can be very subtle, because I've been in India a lot, and I've seen people even touch my feet, let alone a swami or something. And it's very uncomfortable for me. And I've asked a couple of gurus, how do you feel with all this veneration and everything? Because they were nice enough, humble people who I could say that to. And they said, well, I used to try to resist it, but then I realized they need it. They want it. They want to be able to do that. It's a cultural expression of respect and gratitude. And it would be wrong to deny them that or make them feel bad. So it gets very, very complicated.
Tim Wilkerson is making a good point here about devotional situations. And I think that it's very natural for devotion to well up at a certain point in a person's development. And there's a legitimate place for its expression.
Yeah.
And so this whole point, like you say, it is delicate. There's a balancing act between allowing that expression and having it get blown out of proportion or be taken advantage of.
And for me to understand that it's not actually me that they're venerating.
That's a very good point.
Mm-hmm. And to the point of touching feet, like in India, I think children do that to their parents. It's very culturally
That's right.
ingrained.
Exactly
Yeah, so-
right. And to elders. I realized at one point they were doing it because they think I'm old.
Isn't that
I know there's stuff about that that we need to percolate, but I think we've enough to
Yes.
you know, let mature a little bit in our minds. Next one, addressing promptly any personal issues, concerns, or challenges that might affect our professional competency.
Can you give us an example or two?
I'm sure you can, Rick.
Again, I might add something just to make it specific that says through supervision, or, I mean, it depends on what modality you're in, but I have a supervisor, so I'm addressing these things through supervision.
Is it also addressing, like, if you're going through a major change in your life, to address that it might compromise how well you do, you know, maybe it's not time for you to be out there.
Yeah.
You have to deal with things in your life. And
That would be an example for sure,
yes,
I would think. Yeah.
like going through
Personal
a medical
issue.
change, or
Yeah. Obviously, illness.
right. Mhm. Things that inspire grief, you know, losses, things like that. Yeah.
Lawsuits.
Oh, that might inspire grief.
Yeah.
Good. Did the same one again. Sorry about that. Overlapping with something earlier, making only honest, realistic statements regarding the benefits of our teachings, practices, courses, and other offerings. Regular reviewing our motivation for serving as teachers and monitoring the integrity of our words and actions.
We got a note prior to this meeting. It was interesting to make motivation plural, because you know we're driven, we're motivated by more than one thing. So motivations.
We're committed to acknowledging that regardless of our spiritual attainment, we are human beings with human personalities, limitations, drives, and needs.
That's in many ways a tough one, in the sense that there's both the assumption sometimes on the part of teachers that they've sort of transcended all that, and then there's also oftentimes the assumption on the part of students that the teacher has, you know.
Well, to me, that speaks to regardless of spiritual attainment, because they're still walking around as human beings, and they're still David and Phil and whoever else, and that's what's implied in that. And I think that part is inarguable, but I anticipate anything. Rick has had to deal with that sort of thing a lot more than most of us have.
And
yeah, in terms of people I've interviewed and having to take them down and stuff. Yeah.
And how much of what has been in the exalted scriptures was actually marketing of its time. You know, to deify the teachers, to deify. It's like, here we are. Here's what it has morphed into.
But there, I would say there's still the recognition that there are those people at higher levels of consciousness, and to know that, but to also, I mean, as it says, acknowledge their human side, not to, one can slip, apparently, and to be aware of that, and to cater to the more human side.
I think we have to slip. How else are we growing? If we don't slip, there's a problem.
Yeah.
Like there's a problem if we don't slip, and that's not I don't know, not seen or recognized, or there's no space for that. There's no space for that right now. If you screwed up, you are just lashed. And because we've no forum, we're not in that place yet to look at all these layers of knowledge that need to be out there and agreed commonly, you know?
Right. Yeah, it's been made very one-dimensional in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a little off topic, but I think one of the things I see in the ASI intentions and the conversations I've been privy to is the possibility of having support systems and guidelines and some way of reaching students and giving them help in dealing with teachers and all these issues. It's not a code or something, but some of these things, you know, what I start thinking of is, well, some of this is inevitable. The students have to be able to deal with all this and the personalities of teachers and so on and so forth. So something else to throw into the mix.
We have the student guidelines, right?
They exist? I forget.
They do.
Yeah, okay, good.
And it gets you on the website there, Phil.
Yeah, right. That's right. I forgot.
Yeah, and you know, at the beginning we had copious conversations around let's focus on students. No, let's focus on teachers. And if the teachers' problems are because we don't have our act together, you know, so it's on us to embrace the change first, you know. But yeah, the student resources, we need to rewrite the student guidelines. It's a short document at some point, but resources we've started to compile in terms of a list of therapists who deal with, you know, with cult, with abusive. We're starting to put that together, you know.
Just curious, would this be something that like any teacher or something would like sign into, and then they'd get like a label or like a sticker or something that they have, and then if there's and then it's policed by like a council and all this other stuff, or if there are complaints, you know, you have a judiciary or something to revoke their stamp or something like this. Is this where this is moving towards? And just curious in terms of trying to put this collective together.
Yeah, sure, Gino, good question. We have the first part set up in terms of we have our evolving code, we're at it. We have the supportive stickers. So if you become a member, the idea is the way to become a member, the only way is to say, yeah, I agree to abide by the code, which is this document or will be this document. And then you put that sticker on your website. But the accountability, no, that's got to come through peer-to-peer support. It can't be a hierarchical, because that's the model that doesn't work, that give rise to these things.
The reason why I bring this up is right now I'm working on a big project. I'm in Hong Kong. It's 3 a.m. here.
Oh.
But we're looking
no wonder
at
you're lying down.
we're looking at personal development in the era of COVID. And so what we've done is we've mapped out, there are like 2,600 companies in Hong Kong in this space, including 300 yoga studios. There are 70 mind-body centers, not to mention all the independent, you know, from Rolfing to Feldenkrais to Hoffman Process to you name it, you know, energy, crystal, you know, whatever. It's Hong Kong. So, you know, you have the traditional acupuncture and all this Chinese medicine stuff as well, too. And what we're doing is we're mapping out this ecosystem. And then we've kind of identified 5 types of people. People that are maintaining, exploring, healing, seeking and awakening. And what we've done is that different people have different needs and, you know, the different language and everything. And then what we're doing is we're creating like a membership club. So it's like a time money bank. We're looking at like 300 US a year or 40 hours. And what happens is half of the money that their membership goes to doing all the events that we have across these different spectra of people. And then the other half go into a time money bank that's actually matched by all of the businesses that are also sponsor members of this as well too. And we're looking at developing something like this for all of the companies that we have kind of in this. And then we're just mapping Hong Kong out with this membership. And then the idea is then if you go to LA, you know, New York, or the yoga studios, the gong bath places, etc., that you could drop this kind of in. And so that as these different places become COVID free and can meet in person again, you can do these kind of gatherings. And then you have online, and we're doing VR and Zoom and this kind of thing to get these different people, communities that are geographically different to be able to connect. And so this is kind of what we're working towards. And we've been talking about like a certification thing, but as I'm going through this is like, hey, this is exactly the kind of thing that we're trying to do independently anyways. Why don't we just use this?
You sound like the Jeffrey Martin of the East. You know Jeffrey? He put together the Finder's course. His mind works like yours.
No,
big thinking.
He worked with me here in Hong Kong for a year.
Oh, cool.
I was with him before the Finder's course.
Yeah.
And we met at, I hosted TSC in Hong Kong in 2009.
So at the minute, there's not a lot of the members who've put the logo, that stamp to say, yeah, I'm a member of this, so therefore I adhere to this. Not a lot of us have put that on our website. I'm not sure why. Is there another system? I'd love to hear feedback on that in another forum or email or something. Thank you, Tim. You have it on your website, and it's on mine too, and it's on Backgap. But then the next layer, it's very slow, you see. It has to be slow because it has to come from organic. It has to come from ourselves as we grow and mature and learn from each other. So there is a pace involved in this. But we're at it, But yeah, great, Bradley. Thank you. Yeah, whoever can put the stamp on it to say you're accountable. And I've also been talking to venues when I used to travel, saying, would you make this a safe place so that like in your venue, your ashram, your whatever it is, conference center, would you say that you are a supporter of the ASI? Cost you nothing, just put the logo on your site. But what you've got to do is when a teacher comes in or somebody who's presenting anything, ask them, do you subscribe to a code of ethics somewhere? Is there accountability? Do I know that my customers are safe when they're under your direction here? And that's the other layer of it that we're trying to advocate on a personal basis. And it's not that everybody has to subscribe to this for a venue, to our one. They've got to subscribe to some code of ethics. There must be accountability somewhere, So that's in train.
There was the point about not exploiting students' time by making them overwork and so on. And Tree posted a thing about, well, what about doing some washing dishes on a retreat or something like that? I think that kind of thing is reasonable, but there have been instances where teachers have worked students to the point of exhaustion, to the point where they kind of become, zombies and don't have any volition anymore because they're so exhausted. And that's a form of abuse that, it's all kinds of things which are appropriate to a certain degree, but if taken to extremes, become very inappropriate.
Just as an aside, that I just happened to hear on NPR a few days ago, that's a real problem in the rehab industry, where they take people that are intensely suffering from addiction and they stick them in these programs and they say, oh, we're trying to teach you the work ethic. And they make them work for nothing for hours a day. And they didn't give them protective equipment when COVID started and treated them as essential workers, put them in that category. Just an aside, meaning that this sort of abuse obviously goes on in lots of places, but they took people that were suffering and very vulnerable and made them go through all this. And it was kind of shocking to hear that, actually.
Yeah. So yeah, on that point 21, so it's about shifting from, the tradition of seva to make sure that we know the point of where people are working as a community and helping each other for the greater good, or where there is exploitation. And I suppose just scrolling through the other chat box, Hannah said, if there's no policing, then how is there accountability? And that's what we're trying to cultivate. That's the point, is can we be self-monitoring, self-reflective? Can we introduce that into our culture through some type of like supervision that's appropriate for our sector? What would that look like? Can we birth it? And maybe it's a new model.
Can I throw something in here that may give this even more context? So I'm looking at use for this project that I'm doing right now. The other big project that's being conceptualized right now globally is related to this whole project overall, is a global decentralized modern mystery school. And if we have like a code of ethics and a rules of engagement, that makes something like that. And I know this is like future down the line, but I'm kind of getting excited, looking at. But then if we have like a vision of where this is going, then its context and its role can be a lot more clear.
On the comment about policing, that's one of the most common objections to the ASI that I have heard since we founded it, which is that, people say, well, who do you people think you are? You kind of lording it over everyone, presuming to have some kind of moral superiority. And we always, whenever we've given a talk at SAND or anything, we always try to dispel that notion off the bat, to say that, we're just trying to enliven these ideas in the contemporary spiritual culture. And, we don't want or expect ever to have any sort of authority like the American Medical Association might have to grant or retract licenses or anything like that. It's not our role. I don't think it ever will be.
But I guess in today's era of Me Too, Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, I think, getting something down, at least putting some I play Go, putting some stones on the board to map out the territory, I think is, again, it's a context for having the conversations, right?
One of the reasons I was asked to help out with this is I was part of an organization 15 or so years ago that was attempting something similar. And we ran into the same issue of how to provide for accountability. And like ASI, we didn't want to have, the kind of professional organization that the American Psychological Association or any of that is, with licensing and, the ability to decertify people and all that. But one possibility is to create forums for issues that arise to be hashed out and to be discussed among the combatants or the, people, but without, I certainly don't want to get involved with enforcement mechanisms, but, we may be able to come up with some model for there to be accountability of some kind and forums by which disputes and these subtle situations that come up to at least be voiced and made public or something.
I think just the sense, perhaps, that's not even recognized in the spiritual community at large. that there is a community of teachers, so that there can be some sense of the community of teachers
Right.
talking among themselves, acknowledging where they see their own friends, you know, needing to come back a little bit. That seems to be a more powerful means of recognizing problems than some kind of certification, some
Right.
arbitrary standard, but there's so many, to me, there are so many teachers who have created their own community in which the community feels like the teacher is the only real spiritual teacher on the
Right.
planet.
Right. And what do we do when somebody signs on to the code of ethics and has a sticker on the website and then violates it? You know, what happens then? That, and there's the clear-cut violation, and then there's the accusations that have to be litigated and, you know, investigated, and it gets complicated.
I work in this.
Can you hear me? About the accountability. I think students want to think teachers know everything. And also students need someone to glorify, or teachers. Students go to the divinity through teachers. So like Queen Elizabeth said, she just plays the role being a queen and nothing to do by her personality. So that I think it's important teachers knowing playing, being the guru, nothing to do with the personality, playing both roles. And also students need to know teachers go through a crisis too. And giving students knowledge, teachers are human too. Like when we are children, we think parents like God, they know everything. But as we get older, we understand they are just a man or a woman. So let the students know we're just the humans, just like you, and I'm doing the best. And what is important is to polish the heart, even when we make mistakes. When we do from love, when we do from good intention, even when teachers make mistakes, they understand. And that communication, children know when parents call, they don't like to hear it, but they kind of get the love and give up and do, and it doesn't matter if parents are right or wrong. It's when they feel the love, the message, the communication goes through. And what we want is to polish that part of account. We need to meet the accountabilities, but we're not perfect. And students, it's nice students knowing teachers are doing their best. And there's no perfection. There's no one answer. There's no highest. That's what I wanted to say. And people who become an ASI members are people who want to do this, and people who are not interested won't sign into this. But by us doing the right thing, we cannot rule people, but we can inspire people. Like the good energy is contagious. And I think that's how I think what ASI can do. That's all.
Thank you, Kumi. Yeah, it's very much evolving, because I don't think it's really happened before what we're talking about. It's a cultural shift that we're exploring, you know, so it's going to take a lot of conversations. And I'd love down the road, if we had a meeting similar like this, to speak about, well, okay, what do we do if one of us screws up? If we've got a blind spot and a student says, hey, you're a member of the ASI, and you've, like, number 11 and number 13, you are not keeping to that. And what's the system we can put in place to have that efficiently done? Because if we could give some power back to the students so that they could say and be heard and be respected for their opinion, to help us to self-reflect. Like, where do we have to go for that? I know this is another topic, but there's something around this, all right, so now when we do breach the code, and of course we will, we'll have blind spots. We don't know what we don't know. And so when a student comes back to us, does a student know that they can come back to us? I don't know. Anyway, that's another conversation. We're not there yet, but it needs to happen. No? How does this code work? You know?
Thank you.
Can I go on to 22? Okay. Refraining from intimacy, touching, and suggestive remarks that are or can be construed as inappropriate in a student-teacher context. Okay.
Can I say something on that one? Yeah. For me, during awakening, sex has completely fallen away. So, but a lot of times at retreats, there's a hug. Yeah. I don't feel it's inappropriate touching, but, you know, there's the intimacy of a very deep meeting, and there's a hug. So, yeah, I just wanted to put that in the ring.
It's obviously there are borderline situations where even somebody that you hug innocently is going to take it the wrong way. And this is a complicated area. We all look forward to being hugged again, post-pandemic.
Yeah, so I just want to be clear on that. So refraining from touching, yeah, what do you mean?
Well, the word, that's where the inappropriate comes in, and it shouldn't imply you never touch or you never hug. But, you know, like someone said, first ask if it's okay, get permission. I mean, this is where the supporting documents will have to be, flesh out all of these things.
Yeah.
The whole point of this was to not flesh it out in the code itself, because then it's 3 or 4 pages and no one would read it.
So it's something around mutual consent, really, isn't it? And then what is that?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And can someone who is in awe of their teacher actually consent?
There we go.
Also true.
There we go. If you've got a teacher who's love bombing somebody, it's like they're wide open, but it's actually not appropriate at all because they're reacting to something else.
I shored up that language a little bit, but it did come to me that the other side of that, and I remember Gangaji having this and some other people where the other side of it is that the teacher, there's can be an empathic transmission and things, and their nervous systems I have a trouble handling the touch. Like Gangaji was like, you know, I love you. We're both bowed before the same, you know, universe, whatever, but don't touch. So, because it was like, you know, the other side of it is people wanting to kiss the feet or do all these things to the teacher, and the teacher's like, you know, no thanks. So there's something within that too of healthy boundaries and permission in the space. And so there has to be something in there. And I also shored up a little bit more number 3, sorry, 23, where getting at the gentleman in across the waves there in Asia, looking at healthy group dynamics and interpersonal. So I changed it to aligned commitment to teach in a kind, loving, compassionate manner, including one-to-one sessions and facilitation of the qualities within the group interactions. Something like that, where not every teacher really is a good group facilitator or understands the intersubjective space. Wilbur's come to mind a lot around the lines of development, and I've wondered about this idea of being a little bit more explicit around evolutionary lines of development and having an awareness of that within each integral line. Because
that's the kind of thing that should be in a supporting document. So we could
sure. Okay.
We could do all kinds of things. I have to leave in 4 minutes. So
we're on the last point. Sorry if we're railroading anything, but this is recorded, so we'll work with that. Offer support to teach colleagues and ASI members to the extent that they are able and available. Peers and colleagues. I think somebody already sent that in.
Good.
Wait, one more thing. One of the things may be helpful would be to take our worst situations, and the reason why we're doing this is because these are anecdotal things that have happened before.
Right.
And this is why this statement is here. So like a law kind of thing, you have like an understanding of intent and motivation of the group.
Right. I agree.
I actually like Gino's comment there too. I was thinking that, although I'm a complete rookie on this and I'm on the steepest learning curve in the room, but I do think that most people would have a pretty easy time identifying those sorts of paradigm worst case scenarios. You know, it could be heavenly deception. It could be student-teacher boundary issues having to do with sex. It could have to do with economic exploitation, threat and coercion. I mean, just certain things that are just sort of part and parcel of some of these sorts of cultural detractors of everything having to do with spiritual organizations. So I think that it would be good to have a sort of a composite of, you know, what are those 10 major categories, and just sort of, you know, be able to present those, and that this is in response to X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And the other thing that just strikes me, again, I'm just seat of the pants here. I'm not sure I've heard the basic principles just stated on their own. I mean, someone said do no harm, I think earlier, Jack, but you know, the student's good, confidentiality, respect, veracity. You know, that some of those basic sort of mid-level principles that everybody kind of understands, they're good things to have there. And the other thing too is, you know, we try to come up with honor codes in medical schools all the time, and we never quite get it right. I don't know if anybody ever did, unfortunately, but you know, we try to keep it down to, you know, 10 or 12 items that people can really relate to and keep in their minds and bring into conversation. So we have an honor code committee. We don't call it a code of ethics. We call it an honor code because that means that the policing is more intrinsic. And an ethics code, suggests that, well, somebody's going to identify this and you're going to get dinged. Whereas an honor code is more, my integrity and so it has its own internal dynamic and power that a code of ethics doesn't quite grasp. I don't think. So there's just some of my thoughts, and that's just
No, thank you.
very
That's great.
casual. So
Great.
We're at the time. I'm just going to be disciplined and close it out, so that we don't get into habits of going way over, and just respect everybody's schedule. Thank you to Phil, who's been like an incredible resource to spearhead this. Thank you to you all for bringing your time, your intelligence, your experience to this meeting. Absolutely appreciating all the input, which we will cook and ferment and change what we can and start publishing it and adding it as we percolate further. We meet
and
again.
keep the feedback coming. You'll have thoughts about all this. Let us know.
Yeah. We meet again we're going to change the meetings from Wednesday to Monday. So 6 weeks time. We don't know exactly yet what we're talking about, but that's the goal. Same time, but 2 days earlier in 6 weeks time. That's a very Irish way to say it's out there somewhere. Thank you, everybody. Catch you downriver. Thank you.